apologising.
You're not going to apologise?
No, why should I?
Well, then go.
According to reports, Simon Cowell made a decision that shocked the entire X Factor production. This wasn't just about music. It was about defiance, control, and the contestant who dared to push the show too far. The six-chair challenge was never meant to be easy. In fact, it was deliberately designed to push contestants to their limits. Unlike the warm, hopeful atmosphere of initial auditions or the high-stakes drama of live shows, this round was pure, unrelenting pressure. You had one shot to impress the judges, one chance to claim a seat, and even then, that seat could be taken from you moments later. In 2015, that pressure reached a breaking point, and events quickly spiraled beyond anything the producers had anticipated. Wembley Arena was packed with over 5,000 people that day. Each person in the audience was ready to cheer, boo, and react to whatever chaos unfolded on stage. The judges Simon Cowell, Rita Ora, Cheryl Fernandez-Versini, and Nick Grimshaw sat poised in their signature seats, prepared for long hours of performances. Everyone knew this round was brutal, but no one could have predicted just how tense and uncomfortable things were about to get. Among the dozens of acts lined up to perform was a 21-year-old named Mason Noyes. He wasn't a household name, at least not yet. In fact, most viewers probably hadn't remembered much about his first audition, which had been aired for less than a minute during the earlier stages. It was the kind of blink-and-you-miss-it edit that made almost no impression on TV audiences. But those who had been there in person knew he had something special. Mason had delivered a confident performance, blending R&B, pop, and his own vocal flair. He looked sharp, carried himself with purpose, and never appeared rattled by the noise or distractions around him. That presence alone was enough to make him stand out. But in the world of the X Factor, standing out could be both a blessing and a curse, especially in a round like this, where spectacle was expected and emotions ran high. Behind the scenes, producers were racing against the clock. Everything needed to move quickly. Performers were shuffled in and out. Song choices were double-checked. Microphones were adjusted. Cameras reset. The format left no room for error, and in an instant, an ordinary moment could turn into something unforgettable. Contestants either soared, collapsed, or, in rare cases, did something completely unexpected. Mason stood quietly amid the chaos. When his name was called, he stepped forward, walked out under the bright lights, and took his place at the center of the stage. The crowd greeted him with polite applause, the kind you give to someone you're not quite sure about yet. He gave the judges a quick nod, microphone in hand, ready to perform. The track kicked in. It was a sleek, upbeat medley inspired by artists like Justin Timberlake and The Weeknd. Mason moved confidently, mixing falsetto with rhythm and delivering vocal runs with ease. He didn't overdo it. There was a control to his presence that suggested experience. He wasn't just trying to win the crowd over, he was showing them he already belonged there. When he finished, there was a momentary pause, the kind that makes everyone wait for the first judge to speak. Mason stood still. The crowd clapped. Some even cheered. The panel exchanged glances, slightly caught off guard. It hadn't been a bad performance, far from it. In fact, it was one of the most polished of the day, but the silence lingered a little too long. No immediate feedback. No quick praise. No Simon smirk. Something fell off. Mason adjusted his microphone, glanced at the audience, and took a deep breath. He had something on his mind, and in the next few seconds, everything was going to change. For most contestants, reaching the six-chair challenge was a dream come true. For Mason Noyes, it came with a chip on his shoulder. What many in the arena didn't know, and what most viewers at home completely missed, was that his first audition had barely been shown on TV. While other singers were featured in long, emotional montages complete with interviews, audience reactions, and extended performance clips, Mason's audition had been cut down to just 47 seconds. That fact stuck with him deeply. His frustration wasn't about being dramatic, it was personal. He had delivered a strong audition. The judges had responded positively. So, why was his screen time slashed to under a minute? Why was his name barely mentioned, while others had their stories told in full? Those 47 seconds became more than just an edit. To him, they symbolized everything unfair about the process. So when Mason walked into Wembley Arena for the 6-chair challenge, he wasn't just there to sing. He had something to prove and something to say. After finishing his carefully prepared medley, the tension in the room was already building. He had hit every note. He had given a performance worthy of serious consideration for a seat. But Mason wasn't going to wait quietly for the judges to decide his fate. Before anyone on the panel could speak, he turned to the audience. "I've got something to say," he began. At first, the crowd made only a few scattered sounds. Then his voice grew louder. "You know what? I invite you all to film this or put up your phones. They ain't going to throw 4 or 5,000 people out." He wasn't joking. Mason was urging the audience to record what was happening. He wanted the moment documented. Whatever was about to unfold, he wanted it on tape. The judges looked stunned, Simon Cowell especially. "Mason, just 1 second," Simon said sharply. "What gives you the right to say that?" Mason didn't back down. "With the first audition I watched on Saturday, people had 10 minutes. He paused, then continued. "I went to 47 seconds. That was the turning point." The audience reacted immediately. Some clapped. Others looked confused. Many simply watched, unsure if this was part of the show or something completely unplanned. Simon's response was swift and sharp. "Mason, you know what? You are 5 seconds away from getting thrown off the stage. And I mean it." His tone was controlled but firm, leaving no doubt. The atmosphere between judge and contestant had turned hostile, and fast. "Don't tell me how long you should have on this show," Simon added. "If you've got a problem, then just go." It was a clear ultimatum: apologize and move on, or leave. Mason wasn't going to back down. Not after what he believed had been done to him. The exchange continued for a few tense moments. Simon demanded an apology. Mason refused. Finally, Simon stared at him and said, "Well then, go." Mason said nothing. He simply dropped the microphone, turned his back, and walked off stage, his performance partner following behind him. The arena fell silent. Just like that, a promising contestant was gone, not because of his talent, but because of what he had chosen to say and the way he had chosen to say it. What happened next would send shockwaves through the production team, the judges panel, and the X Factor fan base. But behind the scenes, something else was already brewing, something that would soon take the situation in a very different direction. In the history of the X Factor, few moments had unraveled as quickly or as publicly as the confrontation between Simon Cowell and Mason Noyes. What began as a polished performance turned into a tense standoff. Once the lines were drawn, neither man was willing to back down. When Simon said, "You are 5 seconds away from getting thrown off the stage," he meant every single word. It wasn't a scripted stunt or a clever ratings ploy. It was raw instinct. The authority Simon wielded over the show wasn't just symbolic. He had the power to end a contestant's journey in an instant. And in that moment, Mason was testing the limits of that authority. From the judge's perspective, Mason's actions seemed arrogant, disruptive, and even disrespectful. The panel had already endured long hours of back-to-back performances. For them, Mason's sudden outburst wasn't just unexpected, it was jarring. The format of the show wasn't designed for contestants to grab the microphone and deliver speeches. There was a rhythm to the production, a system in place, and Mason had thrown that system aside in front of a live audience. Yet, Mason didn't flinch. He didn't crumble under the weight of the confrontation. That in itself only made the tension more intense. When Simon demanded an apology, it wasn't simply about smoothing things over, it was a direct challenge. Either Mason acknowledged that he had broken the rules, or he walked away. Mason chose to walk. When he dropped the microphone and exited the stage, it wasn't a dramatic storm-off or a shouting match. It was deliberate. He didn't raise his voice, didn't try to have the last word. He just left, still believing that he had said what needed to be said. Backstage, reactions were mixed. Some crew members were caught off guard and unsure how to respond. A few quietly admired Mason's nerve, while others saw it as a foolish mistake. The tension followed him from the stage, into the corridors, out of the arena, and eventually into the headlines the very next morning. Clips of the incident spread online almost instantly. Fans debated whether Mason had gone too far or whether Simon had overreacted. Headlines labeled it a meltdown. Some called it career suicide. Others saw it as a rebellious stand against a system that didn't treat every contestant equally. Inside the production team, the question quickly became, was Mason done for good? Would he be banned entirely from the competition? Many believed the answer rested solely on Simon's decision, and Simon, by all early accounts, wasn't interested in reconsidering. One producer anonymously told the press that the fallout behind the scenes was tense, and that Simon was genuinely frustrated, not just by the disruption, but by the precedent it might set. The X Factor thrived on high emotion and drama, but there was still a line. And in Simon's view, Mason had crossed it. Nick Grimshaw, Mason's category mentor, reportedly tried to calm the situation. He admired Mason's talent and saw potential in his ability to connect with younger viewers. But even he understood that keeping Mason in the competition might come at a cost. For the rest of the contestants, the message was crystal clear. This wasn't the place to challenge the system. The X Factor was a show with rules, structure, and a hierarchy. Step outside of that, and your shot could disappear, no matter how talented you were. In the days following Mason's dramatic exit, the incident dominated entertainment headlines and social media feeds. Viewers replayed the moment over and over, the mic drop, the standoff, the crowd's uncertain reaction. But the real drama had shifted backstage, where decisions were now being made quietly and decisively. According to multiple production sources, Simon Cowell wasn't just angry, he was done. What had started as an uncomfortable exchange had, in his eyes, escalated into something far more serious. During a post-show debrief, Simon reportedly told producers it was disgusting. He wasn't referring to Mason's talent, but to the way Mason had hijacked the moment and encouraged the audience to join in. For Simon, that wasn't boldness, it was sabotage. By inviting the crowd to take out their phones and film the confrontation, Mason had turned the situation into something bigger, framing it almost as a movement against the show's control. To Simon, this was dangerous territory. The phrase, "it was disgusting," began circulating among the production team. It wasn't meant for public release, but insiders leaked it to the press, fueling the controversy further. According to those close to the situation, Simon refused to watch any more footage of Mason. The door wasn't just closed, it was locked. Nick Grimshaw tried to intervene. As Mason's mentor, he believed the situation had been blown out of proportion. He argued for a second chance, not because Mason was a showman, but because he was a singer with real potential. Grimshaw reminded the producers that audiences often embrace contestants who broke the mold. Simon didn't see it that way. His stance was firm. No apology, no discussion, no more screen time. It seemed that Mason's journey had reached its permanent end. Fans wondered if he would ever appear on the show again. The X Factor team stayed silent, only adding to the mystery. But behind closed doors, the producers faced an unexpected dilemma. Another contestant, Tom Bleasby, had voluntarily withdrawn from the competition. His departure left an open spot in the next round, and there weren't many options left to fill it. That's when Mason's name resurfaced.